Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. We love our intranet, improve employee engagement in 5 days. If this is your first time joining us, our 30 on Thursday webinar series is a bi-weekly 30-minute SharePoint webinar series where we talk about all things Microsoft SharePoint, from hot topics to new products and best practices. Our next webinar will be December 18th, where we will be talking about creating an employee directory in SharePoint 2013. It's a part 2 to our webinar that we did in November. So if you're interested in watching that webinar or any of our other archived webinars, you can go to our website, sharepoint.protiviti.com/webinars. Also, if you're interested in reading more about SharePoint and some of our newest SharePoint content we have out there, you can check out our SharePoint blog on our website as well. If you're interested in learning more about Nintex, we are having a Nintex week in Houston, Texas next week. It's 4 days of Nintex workflow and forms training. We have individual courses you could sign up for, or you can sign up for all 4 days. This is also offered online. So if you're interested in attending this course or learning more about our training services, you can go to sharepoint.protiviti.com/training. So on to today's session. Today's session is being recorded. Again, our archive of past sessions is on our website, as well as this recording will be on our website by the end of the day tomorrow. If you have any questions during the presentation today, please insert them in the question window in the GoToMeeting toolbar, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. So for today's topic, we have we love our intranet, improve employee engagement in 5 days. Our presenter today is Maggie Swearingen with Protiviti, and I am Julia Oates, and I will be moderating today's session. So let's get started. Maggie, I'm going to make you presenter.
Great. Hi, everyone. How are you? Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Maggie Swearingen. I am an experienced architect at Protiviti, and I will be walking you through today's session. We love our intranet. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, what I want to do is I want to set a baseline of goals and put together a plan that's going to help you re-energize your internet and re-engage your employees. I'll be really honest, the planning period is going to take a little bit more than 5 days. But what we're going to talk about ultimately is the 5-day rollout and then what you need to do to have continued success on the site. So I went ahead and set out a couple of baseline goals here for our intranet re-engagement project that we're going to embark on today. And the first one is to increase intranet usage by 3%. Why 3%? Well, according to the Internet World Stats, who has statistics about internet growth and usage going way back to '95, since 2010, general internet usage has grown approximately 1 to 3% every 6 months. Of course, this is usage of the internet. It's global. There are always a lot of factors there. But let's go ahead and say that 3% is a really good growth rate for internet, or in our case, intranet usage. So our goal is to grow our usage by 3%, not only for the 5-day period that we're talking about here, but then to sustain it going forward. But we also want to track some other metrics here to show that we have truly re-engaged our users and interested our users. So what I'd like to suggest is that we also poll certain users. We have a small statistically relevant sample of users on our site, and we poll them prior to our engagement program and after our engagement program. And our goal is to have these users have learned at least 3 new things about our intranet features during the campaign. So what we'll do is we'll ask them, we'll get a baseline, what do you currently know, and then hopefully they will have learned at least 3 new features that they can leverage going forward during the campaign. The other thing we want to see is our capabilities assessment scores rise. And I'm going to talk a lot more about the capabilities assessment in a few minutes. You may have joined us on a 30 on Thursday session back in the summer when my colleague spoke in depth about our capabilities assessment and our user adoption methodology. But I do want to touch on that again. So we'll talk a little bit about that in today's session too and what that entails. So how are we going to do this? Well, first off, like I said, unfortunately, planning and preparation is going to take a little bit more than 5 days. So what I would say is let's give ourselves up to a 1-month planning and preparation period. And I'll walk you through the types of activities that you should be doing during that planning period. Next, we're talking about a 5-day jump start, get everybody re-energized about your intranet campaign. And then following that, we'll have a 1 to 2 week follow-up and review period. And of course, ongoing activities to sustain the excitement that you've gotten during your initial campaign. Planning activities. The #1 most important planning activity is getting executive participation. This won't work without participation, and I don't just mean executive support. I actually mean that executives will participate in a variety of ways throughout this program, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Setting your schedule. Schedule is critical to this. You're not going to be able to do this alone. This plan is created with the idea that you already have some intranet evangelists in your office, and you're going to be leveraging them pretty extensively during this program. Gathering your expert team. Those evangelists I just mentioned, they're critical to this process, and they're going to help us build excitement. Preparing all your collateral materials and takeaways. In a few minutes, I'm going to give you a slide. There's a lot of information on it, so I'm sorry about that. But it's a quick snapshot of the sorts of materials and takeaways you'll want to have prepared for this program before you launch it. One of the things that I have found is that in all my years of doing this, people love to take away one-pagers. I can't explain it. I don't know why. But if you can prepare a lot of succinct one-pagers about features and functionality on your intranet, that sort of material is going to go a long way as a part of this program. The other planning activity you're going to do is administer your baseline capabilities assessment. As I mentioned, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. You're going to need to stock your prize closet. I'm not kidding when I tell you that when there are prizes involved, even us adults get much more excited about things. I'm going to walk through some ideas for prizes that I've seen work in the past, and we'll talk about how you can hopefully get some of that initiated even on a small budget. And your long-term editorial calendar. A 5-day jumpstart and energizing program is amazing, but it's the long-term commitment to this process that's really, really going to make a change. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that you need to think through as you're preparing your editorial calendar going forward for the types of activities and engagement you plan to build on your intranet. So executive participation. The executive team should be at the forefront of all of the activities we're going to talk about during the Jumpstart Week. They need to be vocal, they need to be participatory, they need to be supportive, and they need to be active. They can also be judging competitions that you have, running training sessions during Training Tuesday, and moderating these sorts of sessions that you have. Even acting as a moderator shows their vocal support for this initiative and how important it is from the top down. And that's pretty critical. Rarely have I walked into an organization where the executive team doesn't support the intranet. That's largely because the intranet on many levels was a financial investment. And as a financial investment, they need to support it. So one of the ways that they can support it is by being very involved in this process for us. Setting your schedule. I can't stress enough how critical it is to pick the right week for your organization for this program. So think through what is going on at your organization at any given time. You do not want to pick the week before Christmas, the week of Thanksgiving. If your organization hosts a big trade show, you don't want to pick any time in the month of the trade show. Those sorts of things. While they're great fodder for content, often they're terrible weeks for this sort of activity because people are running around like chickens with their heads cut off, or they're on vacation, or they're just not engaged with you. I've often found that summer is not a fantastic time for a session like this. So a lot of people are on vacation in summer. A lot of organizations have maybe flexible work schedules in the summer that they don't have. Really optimal times for sessions like this are times when your organization is engaged in their regular business, but there's nothing necessarily special or unique going on, so that you can actually have this week and make it a special and unique event. Also, you're going to want to market each day. I've gone ahead and picked my 5 favorite days here that we're going to use for examples during this session, but you can feel free to insert any other creative ideas that you have. We're going to talk in depth about all of these in a few minutes, but Money Monday, Training Tuesday, Working Wednesday, No Attachment Thursday, and Feature Friday are the ones that I have seen work at organizations. So gathering your team, you can't do this alone. It would be great if we could, but those of us who own intranets in our organizations, some of us we're owning intranets that are global. And these sorts of activities are probably going to have to be administered on many levels to actually make them work. And that's practically impossible for one person to do on their own. So what you need to do is start gathering your evangelists. At many, many organizations, there are already people at the organization who are invested in the intranet. Specifically with regard to SharePoint, there are usually SharePoint evangelists in every organization. Often teams have a SharePoint lead. Perhaps you have a SharePoint users group at your organization. And these are the types of people who should be involved in this Jumpstart Week because they're already invested. You're not actually jump-starting them. Plus, it actually helps them take a little bit of ownership of the intranet, which I find actually in the long run is extremely beneficial. So you need to figure out who's in charge of each day, who's managing the processes for each day. Ideally, you're the person in charge of the entire week and the entire program, but think of each day as a small committee. What are their responsibilities, and what are your expectations of them? What is the management and executive team's expectations of this entire program? That's going to be really, really important to communicate to these team members because they need to know that there are expectations of them and that this isn't a joke. It's not something we're taking lightly. This is an initiative that this organization is behind and believes has value, and as such should be treated as that type of activity at work. Many of us are recognized for going above and beyond our regular job responsibilities. These days, frankly, that's not unusual. There's actually an expectation that you do more than it just says in your job description. And this is a great example of that. You're building community in your organization, and you're part of a team that's actually going to help energize the organization. I mentioned marketing materials in this hard-to-read slide. So here are some suggestions for materials that you will want to have prepared going into this week. The Lunch and Learn sessions, we're going to manage them as a part of Training Tuesday, but there are some ideas there for courses that you might want to be teaching. It's a fantastic idea to have any canned webinars or SharePoint readiness videos on hand. It's a wonderful week to sort of roll out that material, teach people where it is, and help build excitement for it. Obviously, you're going to have email communications going out prior to the sessions. You don't want to have too many. I think that that's something that a lot of us, we fall into this trap of doing. Eventually, corporate emails become white noise. So you want to walk a very, very fine line between communicating this fantastic event that you're putting together and its importance to the organization, but not over-communicating it. And as I mentioned earlier, one-page flyers are fantastic to have. your capabilities assessment. So what is the capabilities assessment? The capabilities assessment is a set of questions that you use to identify the comfort level that your staff has with various SharePoint activities. These can be as simple as, can you log on to our intranet? You'd be shocked at how many people cannot log on to certain intranets. And it can be as complex as, do you know how to set up a 3-step workflow on a SharePoint list? There won't be very many people at most organizations who know how to do that. And everything in between. Do you know how to upload a single document? Do you know how to upload multiple documents? Do you know how to tag documents? We're not just asking people if they know how to do it, but we're asking them how comfortable they feel with it. And beyond that, if you don't feel comfortable with it, or perhaps you've heard of it before but you want to learn more, would you like additional training on this topic? The capabilities assessment is a fantastic tool for getting a baseline for how our organization uses our intranet and what we need to target our Training Tuesday on. It also helps identify anomalies. If you offer an opportunity for those who have answered your capabilities assessment to identify who they are, perhaps for a prize for a drawing or a departmental competition to see who has the most participation, if people are actually identifying who they are, you may also find people who are diamonds in the rough, so to speak. People who actually have pretty sophisticated SharePoint skill sets that you could leverage to your advantage as you're trying to re-engage your organization. Stocking your prize closet. So I've seen all manner of prizes offered at organizations, down from $5 Starbucks cards to, $500 Amex gift cards and everything in between. Here are just a few ideas that popped into my head recently. One of the best that I've actually heard from an organization is that they offered an additional day off to a team who won a competition as a part of one of these engagement weeks. So you can go as creative as you want with this, but I don't think you can be successful without a few carrots along the way. So you'll want to think about that and think about how you can do it. Many of us don't have large budgets. So, maybe we can't buy 5 Kindle Fires, but perhaps we could figure out a way to work through HR and get somebody an additional day off, or get some, a lot of organizations have points that you can give someone, and then they can go to the employee store and buy something from the employee store. So anything like that that your organization can offer is something that you should definitely leverage here. And finally, as a part of your initial planning, you'll want to be thinking about your long-term editorial calendar. So what does the next year look like for your organization? And how can you leverage that to promote content and to use content on the intranet? Is there a traditional town hall meeting that you have perhaps in person that you could somehow bring online? Not just a recording of it, but maybe the video, or maybe the town hall meeting is simulcast globally. However, whatever's going on at your organization, how can you push the envelope and make the intranet a part of that corporate communication? That's what's going to be critical here, and that's what you want to think of during your editorial calendar planning. Every piece of corporate communication should somehow involve the intranet. So if you're sending out PDF newsletters, that needs to stop, and that communication should somehow come through the intranet if that's possible. Those are the types of things you'll want to be thinking about, and the types of behaviors you might want to think about changing at your organization to build intranet engagement. And some other ideas are a thought leadership campaign going forward. I know that actually internally at Protiviti we do a lot of these campaigns where we are asked to post some of our best client deliverables, or some blog entries that perhaps we've posted lately, or magazine articles for those of us who are going out in the SharePoint community and writing and speaking. There are campaigns where we're encouraged to submit this all to our intranet so that the knowledge in there is more fruitful and more rich and more valuable and not stale, which happens very, very often at organizations. Another fantastic idea that I heard in the past was a business case competition, where an organization was encouraged to put together their best business case for using SharePoint in their department. And it was an organization-wide competition. They presented their business cases, and the team that presented the best won an award. So let's jump into our week. This is what everybody's been waiting for. All our planning is done. Money Monday. Money Monday is all about corporate giving. It's a very, very easy thing to build into your intranet and a very, very easy thing to build a competition around. What you'll do is whatever your corporate giving program is, some of us have more than one, it'll be heavily, heavily promoted on that day. Hopefully you'll be able to have a mechanism for either communicating participation. So let's say hunger is your organization's something that your organization focuses on. Groups that are participating in the community and helping stop hunger, they can submit videos, blog entries, news feed, Yammer, whatever it is that you're using at your organization, they can submit, and there will be a competition to see maybe what group was the most successful. The reason I also call it Money Monday is those of us whose organizations do something where there's matching, or you can make financial contributions. This is a really, really easy thing to build in. You can have a ticker. You can have one of those thermometers on site. Hopefully the organization has committed to matching whatever you earn on Money Monday, and you can only contribute by going to the intranet. It's a really easy way to build up traffic. As we go through the week, it's not just going to be about traffic, it's going to be about value. But when we start on Money Monday, it's really about traffic and actually just getting people in and reminding them that the intranet even exists. Training Tuesday. All right, this is where we are really talking value here. This is where the capabilities assessment comes into play. And this is where you really, really need your team involved, because one person is not going to be able to teach 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 21 courses over the course of a day. Now, of course, this slide here indicates that you would do it all in one office and several conference rooms and all in person. That's not practical these days. We know that. We're global corporations. So certainly some of these sessions could be held nationwide at different offices. Some of them could absolutely be video conferences. Some of them could be recorded. Earlier this year, I had the pleasure of participating in a 24-hour all intranet video-based SharePoint conference. So, you know, you can do some really great things with video conferencing these days and still get some really good results. That being said, in person is fantastic. You really build excitement. I participated in a big training day at an organization doing a jumpstart like this not too long ago up in Toronto, and I can tell you that when people left the room at the end of the day, they were truly excited because they had all learned at least one new thing that they could go back to their intranet and use in their daily jobs, and that actually made them happy. So that in-person connection is fantastic, but if you're doing it virtually, that will work too. But Training Tuesday is all about topic-based training. You know, figuring out what your organization needs to know to engage with the intranet and do their job better. You'll see here I built in a couple of panel discussions. These are great ways to identify groups who are already using the site effectively and so that they can talk with others about how they're using it. The best ones I've seen are people who have automated business processes through your organization. I've seen a lot of that, and it really builds excitement and it builds interest in the product. Work Wednesday. Challenge your colleagues to work differently and use the intranet to improve one aspect of their work. They then will go to the intranet and submit how they use the intranet effectively that day to make something that they did in their job easier. All the submissions are judged by the executive team, and the winner and the prize are announced Thursday morning. By crowdsourcing this, you actually get a ton of great ideas because what one person is doing, another person hasn't even thought of. And if somebody goes back and reads that log of everybody who has submitted, they're going to get a lot of really good ideas. You can also keep that. It has value over time. So those ideas, 3 weeks from now, those will still often be very, very good ideas. And so it's a great way to challenge colleagues, but also to crowdsource ideas of what people are doing. Because remember, many of us are often just a few people managing an intranet for sometimes very large organizations. And we don't know what the person 4 cubicles down is doing, much less the person in Dubuque, Iowa. So we want to be able to figure out what people are doing in their successes so that we can then promote success going forward. No Attachment Thursday. I honestly cannot take credit for this idea, but it is one of the best I have heard in the last 2 years. A colleague of mine was working at an organization, and she had mentioned that their executives started every Thursday, No Attachment Thursday. And they all set up a rule on their Outlook that said that they will not accept internal attachments from coworkers that day. It must be links from a SharePoint site. Over time, No Attachment Thursday went away because no one had to do it anymore because everyone's behavior had changed. This is a fantastic thing to start at your organization. It doesn't take much. There's value to it because we're not sending around huge attachments filling up our email boxes. There's value to it because we don't have multiple versions of a presentation floating around everybody's inboxes that day. And it's a great way to start people changing their behavior. Obviously, I say internal attachments. You're not probably going to be able to avoid sending out attachments maybe to external coworkers or or getting attachments from people externally, but certainly as an internal initiative, No Attachment Thursday works. If you can extend it and make a No Attachment Week, that would be even better. Feature Fridays. Roll out 1 to 2 new features for your staff. So this will require some planning. We all have probably a lot of ideas of things that we've been wanting to integrate into our intranet but haven't had time. Here are just 3 quick bullets of really fast, easy win, extremely easy things to implement. Food truck tracker. One of the best I've seen in a long time. An organization I've worked with in downtown DC implemented a food truck tracker on their site. So a list, people would go to the list in the morning if they're following food trucks on their Twitter or whatever, and they would tell others what trucks were in the area on a given day, what their menus were. They would rate the food, and over time they actually built up this long list of the different food trucks that would come by the building and whether or not their food was good and who ate there and things like that. It was a fun thing, an almost silly thing, but it was actually used by a ton of people in the office and made them come to the intranet. Traffic and weather widgets, I've seen these all the time. They do actually bring value, believe it or not, to organizations because sometimes you're just on your intranet and it's great to be able to glance up and see what the traffic or weather is like and what the what it's going to be like perhaps at 5 p.m. And an out-of-office calendar, believe it or not, this is one of the most underused but easy to implement features that you could do on your intranet. It's not maybe practical for huge, huge organizations, or perhaps it is, but maybe only at a team level. In our company, we actually at a team level have an out-of-office calendar. We all go to it and post swaths of time when we're going to be out of the office. Not every doctor's appointment, certainly, but if I'm going to be out on a cruise for a week, it's great to just go ahead, post that, so that when we're resourcing for our projects, people know that, hey, we have 14 people out the week of Christmas, or this August is pretty heavy with vacations. We're going to have to figure out how to make sure that projects still get done on time. Everybody always posts when they're out of office in their Outlook, of course, but it's not quite that big picture that you get with your out-of-office calendar. Other ideas, workflows. Obviously, if you can roll out some sort of workflow for your 1 to 2 new features, that's going to be great. Anything that lightens that load. So finally, follow-up and review. One of the best things you can actually do to start keeping metrics is do a follow-up capabilities assessment. So you've done your initial one, you've established your benchmark, you have some targets. After this week, you can follow up. See if some of your engagement activities really made a difference. Obviously, you'll want to continually review your site metrics. I think site metrics and visits and hits are great. They don't tell the whole story, certainly, because they don't talk about value, but they do talk about traffic, and so they do have some bearing on this. And if you haven't already, you should absolutely develop a user group. Many times during these engagement weeks, I've actually seen what comes out of them most successfully be a quality user group at the organization where they just didn't have that kind of connection with each other before, and that connection was built during this Jumpstart Engagement Week. So that was very, very fast. I'm going to open it up to questions here. I know it's 2:01. Julia?
Yes. Okay, so please insert your questions into the question window. We'll stay on for a few more minutes. We do have one question, Maggie. We are trying to decide on a catchy name for our intranet. What are some ways we can decide on the name, and what are some creative names you've heard of?
I've heard of a lot of creative names. My favorite one is Fintranet, of course, because the organization is obviously an oceanic organization. So that one still sticks out in my mind as one of the best ones. Many organizations will have competitions for this, and ultimately the competition will result in one name, but I've seen a lot of organizations give away prizes for some other things too. So there's ultimately the grand prize winner, but maybe the funniest name or the best pun or the best use of our CEO's name, some sort of more funny prizes to go along with the one that usually wins. It's hard to come up with a creative name. If we were all good at coming up with creative names, a lot of us wouldn't be doing what we're doing. We'd be working for Nabisco and coming up with new cookie names and new nail polish names. But the best thing that I've seen organizations do, honestly, is run competitions, and you'll be surprised at some of the creativity that you'll get.
Great, thank you, Maggie. We also had a question. Yes, the presentation will be posted on our website at sharepoint.protiviti.com/webinars. The link will be, it's actually /archived webinars. It'll also be on our YouTube channel. So that will be posted by the end of today, or end of day tomorrow. So. All right, if that's all the questions we have for today, thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate you taking time out of the day to learn more about user adoption and engaging your employees. And thank you, Maggie. It was a great presentation.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.